Okay, welcome back. It is officially time to start again. So by request, I'm going to go over the assignments, the first two assignments first, and then I'm going to start in with the lecture stuff. Then we'll take a break, and then we'll have some more lectures, and then we'll probably go after that. So I won't torture you for too long, those of you who did come back. So this is what you came back for probably, was the assignments. All right, yes, you have a question? I have an answer. You have a request? Yes. You want to go tomorrow? No.
If you could please raise the speakerphone a little bit.
The speakerphone.
The microphone.
Oh, the mic's not working at all.
Oh, not working?
No.
Okay, I thought
It's just me. It's just me.
Okay, I thought it's my ears because
Sit a little closer.
cold. Okay.
No, seriously, yeah. Oh, don't worry. Okay. Otherwise, I'll make an attempt to raise the volume a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, that's
It just gets a little tiring after a while. But you're right. You're right. Yeah. No problem at all. In fact, the further back you sit, the harder it is to hear me sometimes, I believe, as well. All right, so you in the back, can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. All right, very good. I think she's deaf. I'm not going to pick on you now.
It's my ears because I have a bad cold.
Oh, a bad cold might do it.
Yeah.
A bad cold will do it. I'm kind of tired today, too. That's Saturday.
Yes, I know. I'm going to speak louder because it's 4
Okay.
hours to go now.
Normally, I actually do have a microphone. It's just not working today. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to go over the first two assignments. You really only need to do the first one by the time our next class meeting shows up. Because here's how it's going to work. Sometime between now and I believe it's, April? I didn't look it up. April 15th, 16th? It's like a month from now. No, maybe, actually, all right, let me go take a look here. Let me take a look. I got the dates right here on the front, so it's going to be April 2nd and 3rd. Yeah. Sometime between now and April 2nd and 3rd, you want to do assignment number 1, and you're going to want to do, well, you're probably not going to get the midterm for another couple weeks. You'll have the midterm and the CSLO that's going to be coming at you soon. The midterm will have a due date on it. The first assignment doesn't. It's due on the very last day of class. But after you've gone through the material for this particular session and then maybe halfway through till the next one, you'll have everything you need to know for the first two assignments. So that's why I want to kind of go over it, because the next time I see you won't be until after hopefully you've started on some of the work. So what I want to do is give you some of my expectations, some of the requirements for what you need to put together. For the first assignment, what we're looking at is looking at the software process. Again, this was found at bhacker.com. So imagine you are a freelance software consultant and you have been asked to develop a market and financial software package. So you're Acme Inc., the company I said that doesn't exist anymore, that is producing software, and you're going to produce this package. And your initial statement of requirements is listed below. So we have cash flow management system, and we have a bunch of requirements. And you can read through the requirements on your own. I'm not going to read it to you. Hopefully at this point you know how to read. So, end of scenario. Beginning of questions. What you want to do is answer the following questions. Don't repeat the questions. Just go, 1, 2, 3. Or if you don't want to put 1, 2, 3, leave it out and just answer. Here's what I'm looking for. I want you to imagine that you are, this is really covered in lectures 1 and 2. I've already covered this material already, actually. This is focused on the business aspect of software engineering. How are you going to minimize the risk? How are you going to go about creating the software? You've just been given this set of requirements. So number 1, you want to state what software development lifecycle or models you would apply for the development of this system. And you want to justify the reasons for the choice and explain each phase in detail. All right, so most of you who did not take, or if you didn't take Software Engineering 1, you never got the software development life cycles. So what you need to do is probably go on the internet and research software development life cycles. Some of you will probably already know of a couple of them, like the spiral model, rapid prototyping. We actually talked a little bit about the models in one of the lectures. However, I didn't go over the models. And for a very good reason. This is the research part of the assignment. You need to go out and you're going to need to figure out, if I were going to do this set of requirements, which I didn't read you, how am I going to go about this? Most likely you're probably going to want to use a combination of a couple of different models, because no project actually really gets built correctly using one model, and no company actually uses just one model. So find a couple of different things or develop your own strategy. What I want you to do is think about the methodology that you would go through to create this. Given the problem scenario, you might have some different ideas, but I'll leave that up to you to decide on. And you want to give your reasons for your choices. There's no right or wrong answer. There's absolutely no wrong way to answer this. If you mention something about software lifecycle models, I don't mean project planning, which I didn't cover, so it's not going to be a source of confusion. And I didn't really cover software development lifecycle models either, but I'm hoping that you can get this. This is what you should have gotten from Software Engineering 1. So it's hopefully something that is within your reach. If not, you can also send me an email message and say, well, this qualifies as a software engineering model, software development model, and I would say yes or no. Or I would give you some more information, hopefully, to better organize your answer. The second choice, the second item here, you want to discuss how you would go about ensuring the dependability of the CFMS, whatever software program. We're going to talk about dependability. We haven't covered that lecture yet. Reliability, dependability, and legal issues is coming up. So you're going to get that before you leave today. But in fact, actually, now that you know you're going to have to write about it, you can probably, when you start hearing me talk about dependability, you can start thinking and maybe make some notes of things you might want to talk about, actually, which is not a bad idea. And in part 3, you're going to evaluate some of the possible risks. Well, we're going to talk about risks as well. You're not putting together a risk assessment plan. That's assignment number 2. So you do not need to develop a risk assessment plan. You will be doing it in assignment number 2. So what you're doing here is just kind of putting together a paper. What you want to do is submit an assignment in the form of a written paper. Yes, writing. So you're going to be required to do writing. You know, this is a couple of things. You guys are all international students. It helps your writing. Writing skills are very important, actually. So you might know everything there is about software engineering, but you can always use more practice writing, in my opinion. So writing is your choice. Writing is your benefit. So here we go. 2 to 4 pages, double space. That's really 1 page. Not too much writing. I would be shocked if you could answer all of them in a page, single spaced. That's a lot of questions. That's a lot of information to cover on 1 page. In fact, sadistic people would have you go and put a limit. But here's the thing that I have discovered in writing, and this is very common, actually. The fewer words you're able to write, the harder it is to write it. The more words. So I used to hate it when teachers used to say, 5 to 10 pages. I'm thinking, well, that's easy. The longer, the easier it is to write it. You just keep rambling on until you get the page length. If you're only required 1 page, and everything has to fit. It's like those little comment boxes when you try to fill it in, what do you recommend? And, oh my God, I only have 2 words left. And you try to, how am I going to word this? It takes twice as long to write it. It takes twice so. That's why this range goes from 2 to 4 pages. If you're the type of writer that can get it done in 1 page, that's just as good. I mean, 1 page single space, 2 page double spaced. That's just as good and probably better than a 4 page double spaced, twice as long. If you go more than 4 pages, it's really too much. I don't want to hear a diatribe about every software development lifecycle in the world and the pros and cons. Because when you search online, here's what's going to happen. You type in software development lifecycle model, you're going to get pages and pages of software development lifecycle material. I don't want to know a survey or an overview of software development lifecycles. What I want you to do is to recommend what you would do for this particular project up here that's being described. So if you stay focused on the project at hand, and you actually give me lifecycle model recommendation, dependability, and risk assessment information, then there's absolutely no way you won't get 100% on it. If you give me a diatribe about every single software lifecycle model comparison and contrast, you probably will get 1 point out of 5. And the thing is only worth 5 points total. But we're working out of a 100-point scale in the class, so 5 points is really 5% of your grade, actually, if you think about it. So it's only 1 point, 5 point. If you didn't turn this assignment in, you're at a 95 in the class. Don't turn the second one in, you're at a 90. You can see how your grade could drop significantly, given if you've gotten 100% on everything else. So, strategy, that's what it's all about. That's assignment number 1. Are there any questions on assignment number 1? Oh, yes.
Question number 3, right? It's a combo of question number 2.
I'm sorry?
It's question number 3.
No, question number 3 and question number 2. I'm going to talk about dependability. I haven't really talked about it yet. It is not really the same as risks. Risk and reliability and dependability are 3 separate concepts when it comes to software development. Huh?
We have to answer these 3 questions.
You must answer all 3 questions. The last one works with risks.
May have dependability. Risk is not. Dependability will not be.
I'm sorry?
Dependability may be not be risk.
Is not on the list?
May or may not.
May or may not?
Be the risk.
Yeah, correct. It may not be a risk. Dependability. I'll talk about dependability. That unfortunately is going to be our last lecture for today, but because it's last in the stream.
About the question number 3, we just need to find out the risk which can be there with the project, and also, we can put down some of the ideas.
Yeah, yeah.
But when it comes to the planning, it will be done in the assignment.
Correct. Yeah. So you'll need to develop a risk assessment plan, but not necessarily on this project. So you don't have to put a plan together on this project at all if you don't want to. And when you're evaluating, all you're doing is picking out some of the possible risks. You don't even have to solve the problems. You don't even have to think about it or evaluate them. Good questions, by the way. That's what I like. Any more questions? Oh, one in the back. You can hear me back there?
Yes.
Okay, yeah? I'm just kidding.
You can find this assignment. Is it uploaded yet?
Yes, you can find it. You can find it at this website right here.
No.
bhacker.com. You can also find it at itu.edu, ems.itu.edu. However, actually, you know what? It might be in there already as well. Let's go see. Let's go take a look. In fact, I was told the first 3 assignments were in there. So. The TA is going to send a message. It's not going to be in the weekend section. That's a very good question, actually. I'm glad you asked it. The assignments, the course materials are going to be in the weekday section because it's really the same class, and I didn't want to repeat it. So you guys need to look in this software engineering too under the weekday.
I think it's there in ems.itu.edu. I can see
it should be there in the EMS. The first 2 assignments, I believe, are in there already. Actually, let's take a look here. Before I switch, weekday, if you're on bhacker, you're going to find it in the course materials link. You should see right there at the top, it'll say assignment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's where you'll also find video recorded lectures of the weekday class if you want. Some people like this better because they're shorter. This happens once a week rather than having that whole long day like today. So.
Can we download these videos?
Yep. It's actually, they're on YouTube.
Okay.
You can go to YouTube and see them too. BJ Hacker if you're on YouTube. Let's check out the EMS real quick here, actually. This is not a bad time to. ems.iline.edu.
What is the due date for this assignment?
The due dates for all the assignments are the very last day of class. May 9th or something like that. I figure the first week in May. At the beginning of May. It's a good starting point. I was told that the EMS got updated. Oh, she's loud. I can hear the next door. She's louder than I am, I think. She's got a smaller room, too. Let's see, I'm going to... Oh, here we go. Oops, I just was not patient enough. Hold on a second. I want to go into this class and show you. The interface should be very similar.
Yeah, it's similar.
Yeah. Hello, here we go. Let me just go 2011. I guess you guys are all on here because it's running on the slow side. Software Engineering 2. Software Engineering 2, here it is. Click and wait. Click and hum and wait. Oh, here we go. So we have lecture 1, lecture 2, lecture 3, lecture 4. Yep, assignment number 1. Very good. So I believe if you click on the link, it should have an upload button at the bottom of it. Oh, very good. It does? Okay, good. I clicked on it, but I'm wondering what happened. It's probably going to allow me to edit the... Oh, here it is. Looks like this. Cool. Looks like that. It's the same assignment, the CFMS, whatever, on the bottom. Well, mine doesn't have it, but yours will have an upload link down here.
Yeah, but it has it here.
Yours has it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, mine's different because I have a teacher's login. It's a little different. I can edit it, but I can't upload it. You know, whatever. So this is going to be the interface for you to actually submit the assignment. You can actually put the first 2 in, I believe. Here's assignment 1. Here's assignment 2. That's as far as I've gotten. But I'm only going to show you assignment 1 and assignment 2 anyway. So, any questions on the EMS? That was a good question back there. Okay, no problem. I'm going to log out of the EMS then. And it's currently being updated. So eventually you'll get everything that's on bhacker.com will be in the EMS. So, and just make note the videos that are in there are these videos. So, okay, very good. All right, any questions on assignment number 1? Expectations? Yes?
So we have to submit these assignments in Word, or just have to type in the answers, or...
Yeah, actually, you don't have to give me the assignment again. On like this particular one, you could just open up a Word document, type your 2 pages in, 2 to 4 pages, and send that to me. Make sure to put your name and your student ID on it, just in case we download it and we print it out, but we don't see where it came from. The assignments can only be submitted in the form of files. You can't cut and paste and put it in. There's an upload button that you have to upload a file. Microsoft Word works. If you don't have that, an RTF file, I can read WordPad files, WordPerfect files, whatever format you have, I can translate it. OpenOffice.org does it for me. Actually, Microsoft Office does it too.
So do we need to do both the things? Do we need to upload that plus, need to send a copy to you as well?
No. Just one time works. Just upload it to the ITU EMS. We get it there, and you'll get your grade in there as well. Yep. And depending upon how fast we are, you might get the grades for hopefully some of the stuff before the class ends too. Unfortunately, the system itself is kind of work in progress. The ITU EMS. It's actually getting a facelift, new features and stuff like that. So, which is why it's kind of not ready yet. But it's a lot better than it used to be, actually. So this is an improved version of it.
Though you said that there is no need to refer any textbook for this
Correct.
software engineering.
Correct. There's not one textbook that you can find for it.
Not even.
I can't even recommend one, seriously. There's no book that's really going to do the course justice. Or book that, yeah, it's going to cover everything. You know, some books rely heavily upon designs, like UML, or like, you know, object orientation. Some books, and they call themselves software engineering. Some books are all about business stuff. Some books are all about risk assessment, quality assurance.
It's a wide area, basically.
It's extremely broad. It's like taking a course in English. What are you talking about? Grammar, spelling, essay writing. I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, so that's why I say I don't have a book assigned for it because I can't really put one. Can't really specify one. All right, so we have, unless there's any other questions on assignment number 1, I'll move right along to assignment number 2. We haven't hit any of this material yet. You might have noticed we have hit some of the material for assignment number 1, hopefully. Business aspect part of it, software development stuff, but we haven't actually hit it yet. We're just going to start talking about risks. And so after this class and during the next session, we'll actually look at risk assessment plans. And what I wanted you to do for this particular assignment, however, this assignment will produce a risk management plan for a project of your choice. So you're picking out the project topic. So you pick the project out, and the project that is currently being worked on, or come up with a fictitious project. So if you're doing a consultancy or something like that, you could actually pick a project that you might actually be working on in real life, which would be a good educational opportunity for you. So the plan should cover all phases of the project, this risk assessment plan, and should address financial, managerial, and technical risks. We haven't talked about risks yet. We're getting there. And the risk management plan should have 3 parts to it. Number 1, a brief description of the project. Now, we're going to need that because I'm not going to know what you're talking about unless I have a brief description. Should just be a paragraph or 2. Again, this is another paper, very similar to the first one you did. And the second one, you're going to create a list of your top 10 risks. So what you're going to do is identify top 10 risks. These should be placed in order with the biggest risk first, and don't forget to describe how you ranked them. So, as we'll start looking at risks, which we're going to cover before the end of today, you'll see how you can actually kind of put them in different categories. Like some might be completion related, some might be cost related, some might be functionality, acceptance, some might be difficulty. You could place your own categories, describe them if you can. So what you want to do is for each one of the risks that you're going to identify, you're going to put together what the risk is, and a mitigation strategy for the risk, and a contingency plan for the risk, and how you will know when to invoke the contingency plan. What event or what milestone in the bad happenings of everything is going to have to happen before you actually do this. Include a description of the process you will use to manage the risk. This can be relatively brief, so less than a page of text. For example, how will the development team monitor the risk? What processes will you use to decide when to invoke a contingency plan? Blah, blah, blah. How are you going to handle emergencies? Those are just some questions. You don't have to answer all of those questions. What you're doing is using it kind of food for thought in terms of your description of the process. And number 4, to help you manage the risk, you're going to need to take regular measurements to see if you've gotten to the risk yet. How are you going to assess whether or not the risk is happening? So you're monitoring. So the status of the project, you're monitoring that. You choose a suitable set of project metrics, perhaps. Measurements, how are you going to measure the software? Measure the risk of what's happening during the project plan. You're going to collect during the project, then you're going to monitor this, and you're going to describe the metrics in detail, including what you think it might tell you. So you're coming up with your own software metrics. I don't want you to go to a software engineering textbook and say, cyclomatic control or whatever, or this control or that control or whatever. And I don't want you to come up with these metrics, because if you go on the internet and you say, software metrics, you'll get dozens of them. And a lot of them are junk science kind of things, So I want you to come up with your own. You're making this stuff up. You're making the entire risk assessment policy plan up. What you're doing is you're going to also tell me whether it's a measurement of the product, a measurement of the process, in development of the process, how frequently you plan to collect the data to assess this risk, how much effort you think it will take to collect it, i.e. minutes in a week, a day, something of that nature. Whether the method for making the measurement is algebraic, algorithmic, or whether it's subjective. And then whether or not the scale used in the metric is normal, ordinal, interval, ratio. Just tell me something about the scale as well. Notice I did not put a minimum or maximum word count or anything on this one. So that probably should tell you by now. You're probably figuring it out. Well, it's probably going to be more than a page. It depends on how you put your risk assessment plan together. And half of you looking at me going, oh, what do you mean a risk assessment plan? Here's the thing. And there are different methodologies we'll talk about, because we're getting into reliability and risk soon, and today, actually. And by the time today's over with, the weekday class is already given, is pretty much up to these 2 assignments. So you're catching up to them at the end of today. And so you have the same information, actually. The point being is that you actually have to develop your own risk plan in your own format, your own style. Don't go on the internet, because if you go on the internet, what you're going to see is this format, that format. All the formats look different. There's no one particular format you have to follow. We don't have a textbook for the course. You're not going to find it in the book. If you do, you find it in QA textbooks, testing and tools textbooks and stuff. You'll see risk assessment all over the place. And the thing is, there's no standardized format for it. You're coming up with your own. Every company will come up with their own. And they'll come up with their own pattern, their own format. So, as an example, you could take all of this requested description and put it into a chart if you wanted to. And a lot of companies use charts for this. They go, Chart, first column is the number, risk number 1, 2, 3, ordered or in order of priority. Maybe there's even a category for the risk. And then the second column in the middle might have a description and the combination indicators, factors on hat status, when is it going to be checked, how they're going to see it, contingency plan. And then also you can probably connect the risks together. You know, you could actually probably say risk number 1 is related to risk number 9. So if risk number 9 happens, red flag, let's watch out for risk number 1. And you can actually rearrange the priority if you wanted to. You can make it dynamic. You don't have to. You don't have to put any of those features in there. You don't even have to use a chart. If you didn't do that, what most, I wouldn't call them amateur, but what most beginning kind of people do is write out like an outline, a paper, and it's called the risk plan. And someone eventually in the company, if it were used in a real life kind of situation, would put together a chart. And usually the chart would be on the internet or something, and usually it would be status indicators as to how close we're getting to each one of these risks. Because this is the kind of information you need to know in order to monitor the progress of the project that you're working on. So just in case something happens, you know the status of something, and you know how close we are to something. It's kind of like how we manage our budgets. When we take a look at how much money we have, and then towards the end of the month, we got to pay rent. So, let's hold off this amount. Let's not buy this month. Let's not, let's not pay this one yet. Let's wait until next month on this one. And you kind of work, it's the same thing you do with the project. So you have a risk of something happening, risk of running out of money to pay this contractor. So you're going to hold off on paying this other guy for a week or so. If you're managing the money or the capital aspect of it, you might also be managing, let's say, how fast the code is being written or the development process is going at some particular stage. There might be a risk of something failing, and if that fails, something else is going to fail, and something else is going to fail. So you might have a backup plan. So what's meant by the contingency is the what ifs. What if this risk actually happens? What do I do? What do I do to fix it? Kind of thing. If you're at a huge loss for information, and you haven't taken the Software Engineering 1 course, so you haven't really dealt with the concept of risk assessment, you can cheat. And the cheating doesn't mean copy from your neighbor. The cheating means, I also teach Software Engineering 1, and it's under independent study. If you go into the independent study classes, you'll see in here, Software Engineering 1, here it is, Software Engineering 1, SEN 941. It was last taught fall of 2010. We can go in here and go, okay, all right, let's see what do we got going on here. And we hit class notes. Class notes is a 166-page thing, writing thing. In there, it outlines risk assessment, everything you ever wanted to know about risk assessment, and it has a sample plan in there. Shows you how to put together what I just described in terms of that chart with all the different columns. In fact, it's towards the end of that document. So if you click on this link, just to show you what it looks like, I believe that just downloaded it to my desktop. Let me go take a look. It is, here it is. These are the Software Engineering 1 notes from the previous class. I wonder if I just find risk. Risk management is on page 81. So if I go to page 81, this is a long way. This is too small for you to read, and I seriously don't think you're reading it right now. I'm trying to quickly go to 81. Let's see, oh, page 20. That's it. I guess there was a way of going to page 81. Control F? Control G? Control G? Control F? It's a Mac. It's not working. It's a Mac. It's not working. Don't ask me. And actually, kind of like a side note, if you haven't taken the Software Engineering 1 course and you're kind of confused about anything, you can always go in, and this is an excellent source of information. It reads like a textbook. It's probably longer than any textbook you'll ever find on it. But it's going to go through a bunch of Software Engineering 1 topics, which is kind of the foundation for a lot of these other topics I'm talking about. All right, I know there's, wait a minute, you know what? I'm going to go like this. There we go. Oh, look, see, it says page 69. I bet your Windows doesn't do that.
We are allowed to access this file?
Yes, you are. Risk management. Here we go. So, risk management process, identifying risks, strategic risks, financial risks, different categories of risks, everything you ever want to know about risk management. And risk management example, giving you a paragraph of stuff, having you identify risks out of it. And here's a little plan at the bottom, a document for risk assessment. And then it gets into monitoring, mitigating contingencies, everything you ever wanted to know about risk but never got in your software engineering 1 class. Same thing true for software development life cycles. I would download this document, look at, type in SDLC, or software development life cycle. Actually, it's covered in the first part of it. It's the beginning of that course. So the document can be found. Oops, I thought I had that up. Oh, here it is over here. The document can be found as the lecture notes that are class notes that are associated with Software Engineering 1. So at the bhacker.com website. If I went too fast on that before, that's where it's located. Or you can also send me an email message and I'll tell you where to go. I don't know if that power works. Okay. All right, so let me go back to the to that assignment that I was looking at. So what you're doing essentially is your risk plan has these 3 parts in it. You put it together any way you want. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. As long as you give me these 3 parts, and the 3 parts are this basic description, the list, description of the process. Actually, there's more than 3. Did I say 3? I said 3 parts. Oh well, there's 4 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, I think there might be a 5th part. No, just 4 parts. So, 4 parts, not 3 parts.
So all these 4 parts will make up risk management plan, right?
Yeah, and there's no minimum or maximum amount of pages because you can't. It depends. You could put this all on 1 page if you wanted to. You could, in fact, you'd probably want to do it landscape, so you can put out the columns, you know, or you can put it on multiple pages and paste them together if you want to. Or you could write it out in the form of text. You don't have to put together a chart. Or you can find a nice fancy little template somewhere on the internet and use that if you wanted to as well. Or you can use the format that's in the course notes. So I would work on assignment number 1 and assignment number 2 before the next class meeting. It's not technically due till the very last day of class, but for timing-wise, as we're going through the material, that's where you should be, essentially, if you want to pace yourself out, if you don't want to do everything the last week of class. So it covers the material. The material for assignments number 1 and number 2 are covered up through the end of today's lectures, is what I'm saying. Any other questions before we start? No? We're good? All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have more questions as we get through. But right now, we're good. We're good to go. Good to continue. All right, so this is my favorite topic, the legal aspect of software engineering, which is actually kind of the most interesting, I think, believe it or not, in modern day time. Everything else in software engineering is boring, except for the legal aspect. So what this lecture does is it goes through an overview of copyright, patent, trademark, and it goes through some legal issues that are associated with software engineering, something that you really probably do need to pay attention to in terms of the legal environment. And the interesting thing about software is that it crosses over different jurisdictions and different things because, you know, the laws in this country are all by jurisdiction. And in terms of the legal environment, the software is developed in complex legal and economic framework, and it pretty much follows geography. Yeah, did we make it in Colorado? Did we make it in California, Texas? And if you think about it, it's like, well, what laws are different everywhere? And what laws actually apply to software? Not too many of them, if you think about it. So mostly liability, anything. So every software engineer needs to be aware of some of the parts of the framework of the legal system. However, no software engineer should be a lawyer. It's kind of contradictory in terms, actually. If all the lawyers were software engineers, we wouldn't have any software out because everyone would be afraid to put software out on the market. If they actually knew what liability they would actually be held up against, no one would have put any software out. So it's good that software engineers are not lawyers. And you should not trust legal advice that you get on the internet related to software engineering because most of it's wrong. It's like going to Wikipedia, and I hope you guys don't use that. That's wrong. Anyone who wants to can put anything they want out there, and half of the people that post the most stuff out there have no idea what they're talking about, for the most part. But you need a lawyer, you need a real lawyer for anything other than the basic legal issues that you're associated with. So what are the topics that are associated with the legal system that applies to software engineering? Jurisdiction, international, federal, and state laws apply. Intellectual property, copyright, patent, trademark, trade secret, which is what we're focusing on today. Contracts, licenses, privacy, freedom of speech, limitations of freedom of speech. If you think about it, I mean, can you record? Well, actually, technically, can I record a lecture that I'm doing at ITU and put it on YouTube? Technically, I'm under contract. It says I can't, unless I get an approval, so I get permission. Can you take and photocopy a book? No. Can you take somebody else's information, somebody else's picture, and use it on your own website? No. Does it happen all the time? Yeah. How many illegal versions of PDF files are there out there of scanned copies of everything that no permission has been given? So whether or not it's legal or illegal, ethical or unethical, kind of don't even line up, really. And then the other question is it enforceable? Most of the problems that we have with e-commerce and the internet is that we can't prosecute because, as an example, how do you know which state the transaction occurred in for which state sales tax should apply? You know, when you bought something on eBay, you live in the state of California. It's not where you live, it's where the transaction took place. But what if the person's got a P.O. box in Nevada where there's no state sales tax, and they're selling to somebody in California? Should that, you know, and who's going to collect the tax? Who's going to report the tax? Major tax issues, long story short, with software. You're building a program that does e-commerce. You're working with an e-commerce engine. You're participating in it as a software engineer, whether or not you own the program, running the program, or just maintaining it. You have an involvement in it. Are you also liable if there's a violation of something? So, and who owns it? Another good question to ask, actually. I mean, like when you go out and you write a book for a publisher, does a publisher own the book or do you own the book? You own the book. So you write a piece of software, who owns the source code? The person who wrote the source code, unless you legally sign it over to somebody else and through an agreement for transfer. So those are some of the issues. Complex areas, ISPs, e-commerce, location, business law, personnel, your next job. Actually, your next job is a huge issue. There's companies that when you sign contracts says you can't work for another company that makes e-commerce engines. They can actually restrict what you do in your next job, depending upon what you signed in your contract for your current job, etc. and so forth. And I'll get to that in a few minutes. So it's all statutes and precedents. So until something actually happens, which is what happened with the whole Napster thing, copyright infringement, yeah, it's intellectual property. It's owned by people who created it. The American Music Association, the Movie Association is what I meant to say, the music companies, the people who actually own the copyright to the particular articles are supposed to get money for the use of it. You're not supposed to be able to get it for free, but everybody puts everything for free on the internet, which causes problems. So in terms of what we're looking at, we're a common law state in the case of California. In fact, most of the United States is still common law to some extent or another, but they've overwritten a law, and what we have to look at, and I'm not going to give you, in a 20-slide PowerPoint in the next hour and a half, I can't give you an entire legal course. But what I can give you is an overview of how it applies to software engineering. If you're really interested in this area, I highly recommend getting into it. It's a lot more study, though, than an hour and a half. In fact, that's just something I'm looking into personally myself, and I've actually passed the patent bar already and working on the California State Bar so that I can go ahead and prosecute copyright violations and patent violations when it comes to software, because I think it's more interesting now. See, I spent my youth, my earlier working career building software. Now I want to prosecute against people who are using it illegally. So. Well, thank you. So yeah, I'm halfway there. I'm more than halfway there, 3/4 of the way there. I still have to pass what's called a bar exam for the state of California in order to practice in the state of California. So I'm looking forward to that. It's actually, believe it or not, to study law after computer science, it's so easy. Seriously, it's easy. Computer science, software engineering is difficult. The law is the law. It's like history. It's like studying English or history. Or, it's not like a math science. It's a liberal art. But it's easier than like liberal arts stuff too. And believe it or not, especially around here in San Francisco, actually, tons of software engineers have retired and have become attorneys. It's a nice transition, actually, from software engineering, computer science into law, because intellectual property control, patent law, is like booming, extremely booming. The reason why is because we have so many problems with the internet, so many copyright violations, so many issues. There's not enough lawyers to handle all those cases. Unfortunately, it takes a pretty crazy person to go through academic career and go through all the training for computer science and then start over again and do it for something totally unrelated. So you got to be psycho, which I am. So. I qualify. All right, so back to the lecture, statutes and precedences. So what we're looking at here in terms of the legal system from any other breed outside of software engineering, it all follows the same pattern. Statutes, bills passed by Congress, 50 states. In terms of software engineering, we're only really concerned with two, well, actually three. The Data Protection Act, the Patriot Act, SOX, the Sanborn's, blah. Yes, correct. SOX. I always remember SOX and I don't remember what it's for. But those, actually since the year 2000, 2005, 2008, what we've got essentially is a bunch of brand new legislation that's come through that tells people you can only store information for such and such time. And you can only store one piece of information about somebody instead of two or three. And you can only put it on a public server or a private server. Or you have to give us our records. Or if you're the government, we're allowed to eavesdrop on your telephone conversations now and wiretap your phones without your control or knowledge. Or your network, or anything we want associated with a form of communication. So if you're a software developer, you're thinking about, if I write a shopping cart application, should I save the credit card information? Well, legally, you probably have not gone through the training, or your employer probably has no idea either, that there's laws that restrict what you can actually collect and store, and what you can process, and what you're responsible for. Some of these new laws actually made you liable if somebody's credit card information was stolen from your server, and got into the wrong hands or wasn't encrypted, or for use for purposes that were not intended for its use or something of that nature. So when you're building applications, unfortunately they don't tell you this as a consultant, but you should probably have some understanding of the legal aspects of what it is you're doing. Unfortunately, that's kind of something they leave for last, if nothing at all. And it hasn't been until the last 10 years or so that people, since the year 2000, that companies have actually been aware that, there's kind of practices and ethics and things that people should follow. So that's what the latest legislation has been basically looking at. Most of it's from precedences, from judgments by courts, which is how, if you think about the process of how things have changed with music, downloading music. Napster was the big high-profile case that said, is it right to go peer-to-peer, to just take an MP3 file and copy it from, who owns it, so then that was not illegal. Napster did nothing illegal in the beginning. Now they say, now it is illegal. Oh, okay, so now it changes. We can't have peer-to-peer. We have BitTorrents out there still. But not the concept of the BitTorrent isn't associated with the sites that are providing the BitTorrent content that are being transmitted through the BitTorrents. So, I don't know, you could leave that to your imagination as to how, as a software developer, you can kind of work with something that may not necessarily be legal. However, your application is supporting it. If it's supporting it, you have to draw the line. Are you facilitating it? Are you part of it? What's your association with it? And that is all of the stuff that most of the software engineers who have gone into law are actually focused at. Trying to draw the line between what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and what's shareable, not shareable, stuff like that, which is total brand new grounds if you think about it in terms of, I don't know, if you're bored, if you're an old programmer from years ago, old software engineer, and you're bored, that's brand new. You have your opportunity to kind of put your name on a bill or something, or put your work on a policy that becomes a law, that becomes something. So that's why it's exciting. That's why I find it exciting. Anyway, So see the Legal Information Institute of the U.S. Code, the actual wording of the law. In fact, you can get all the stuff online. And I'll show you a website you can go to as a software engineer where you can download copyright notices and things that you can put on your software instead of just cut and pasting them off of the internet. Because what most people do is they just copy everybody else. You know, oh, we should put a copyright symbol on the bottom. Okay, copyright, you know. Oh, we should have a user's license agreement. They go out to the internet, they find one that somebody else used, they cut and paste it. You don't have to do that. There's legal sources that you can actually get it for free without actually even hiring anything. Anyone? So legal changes in the law usually follow changes in the technical world. As you can probably imagine, all of the new technology has brought up a bunch of new issues. Lawyers, politicians typically have poor technical backgrounds, traditionally. So the interpretations of the law are sometimes also unclear or undocumented, or different ways of interpreting it. Yet even often never been tested in the court as well because of the cost of litigation. In fact, a lot of these cases traditionally in the past have settled out of court. And these would be cases in which a software development company built something for a company, something happened. The last thing in the world they want to do is spend 2 years in court and $2 million trying to prosecute something. It'll just give me $100,000 and I'll walk away. So it actually still happens because it's easier that way. And then we have no law that gets built from it, which is what happened or has been happening. Which is why it's the year 2011, and it's only been 10 years since any of this data protection stuff has actually even been developed. Which, you think about it, how old everything is, but I don't know, every time I look at the year, I go, oh, I'm getting older. So, 2011. Alright, so the law generally develops incrementally in stages. It doesn't happen overnight. As a result, strange anomalies often occur as well. Technical loopholes and things. Old world systems with new world systems. One of the interesting things is the recording. If we didn't have the Recording Act changes, how would Google be able to record your conversation legally? But it can, actually. So your Google Voice conversations, don't ever give out any credit card information or personal information on a Google Voice call. If you're not familiar with Google Voice, you don't have to worry about it. If you are, you know what I'm talking about. Everything is saved. And in fact, you even get an email of your conversation if you want, where it's all written out. Well, it's used for data mining. So, in fact, a guy, I can't remember the name of the show. It was like one of these PBS local television stations. He did a test. He paid a bill with a credit card, gave the credit card expiration, 3-digit code from the back, his name, all the information in to process a charge. Within 5 minutes, the card was used at 20 different places. Quick! They were on it like flies. Because he did it over a Google Voice for a test. And he was like really clear with the number. And nobody's really that clear anymore either, 5, 3, he was purposely trying to make it as easy as possible for that information to be stolen. And it was, within 5 minutes, at least 20 places, and it was used, he immediately, actually he used a bad card, he immediately used a bad card on it, or I don't know. I don't know what the story was on that, but none of those charges went through, but it was attempted. All right, so we talk about jurisdiction and boundaries. We talk about legal system. The internet has no boundaries, has no jurisdiction. So internet crime in general, regardless of whether it's related to software engineering or not, it's very hard to capture. So if you break the law in Finland, but you were on the internet in the United States, what happens to you? Actually, at this point, absolutely nothing. What they have to do now is tie the law back to you somehow locally. Like, is it a law in the state of California? Well, now what they're doing actually is using it as collaborating evidence for other problems. Because I hate to tell you, we have more problems with the things that I've heard in terms of the legal issues with the internet. We have more problems with child predators on the internet than anything else. And it's kind of sad when you think about it, but it's the breeding ground for a lot of issues. And what's amazing, especially in the state of California, is how many parents allow their kids to surf the internet unattended. If they only knew, like, over 50% of the correspondences and social networking is for predator reasons, whether it's to get your money, get your card, get your affiliation, get you involved with a cult or something, persuade you to buy something, It's translated into like nothing is safe, not even social networking. So,
Just to bridge that, I saw on the news.
yeah,
If you take a photograph of any person on iPhone,
yeah,
and post it online, the location of that person where
yeah.
that photo is clicked from is showed on the Google map.
It is. It is.
So then, like if you are taking the kid's photograph and posting it online.
Yep, that's how they catch that. That's an excellent example because what child predators are doing, they have a program that looks at the pictures and the IPs and it tells you where the kid is located. Yeah.
So in fact, the picture itself, when you right click and say locate this picture, it gives the location from where that picture was taken on the Google map.
Yeah, that's sad.
Address.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, and now they have programs that actually you can go use Google Maps with the program and it'll even like direct you to the location. It's for cyber stalking, the internet is actually quite useful these days. And this goes way above and beyond child issues. This is like adults cyber stalking other adults. Huge issue. Well, hopefully it's just Americans that are doing it, but anywhere in the world, it's going to be an issue. But it's amazing what people would do or will do and do. Yeah, it's like I can't. What was that? Goldfish or something fish. The Facebook. Are you guys familiar with that? You guys watch local movies from about 5 years? Well, about 1 year ago. There was a thing called something fish. I can't remember what it was called. Goldfish, cyberfish. Anyways, a story about this 40-something-year-old woman who put up 5 or 6 different profiles on Facebook. There was a guy who fell in love with one of the characters. Yeah, I'm sure you heard in the movie. And then he was all in love with the whole family. He met the whole family. Even talked to him on the telephone. They say they exchanged pictures. They did everything. And then he gets on a whim. He's, I'm going to go see her. Drives up to the house and finds out it's an elderly woman, or not elderly. I shouldn't say that. She's in her 40s, not 18 or 19 like she projected herself on Facebook, with a disabled husband and I don't know what else. But there were no kids. It was all made up. Yeah, the whole family was made up completely. The reality of it is it's true. Stuff like that happens every day. So, not to scare you guys, but that's what happens on the internet. All right, let's go back to software engineering. I'm scaring myself now. All right, so I could go off on a tangent on that one. So if you break the law, okay, so what if you're in California and you break the law in Minnesota? Well, we see this with drug manufacturers who have programs who sell, from Canada. You can buy prescription drugs in the United States. The only problem is they're not backed by Food and Drug Administration, FDA, so you don't know if you're really buying what you're buying. Actually, half the time you don't really know if you're buying what you're buying, especially on eBay. Is it brand new or is it somebody else who bought it, didn't like it, they put it up as brand new? It really is brand new, but maybe it's not sealed in the box, tampered with. So the United States has federal laws that cover the United States in general and the 50 states, so that's why we have federal and local. Bottom line, 99.9% of all the jurisdiction is federal. It's kind of like the U.S. mail system. If you don't know this already, if you commit mail fraud by opening up somebody else's letter, which is actually mail fraud, you've committed a federal crime. So if you've done something on the internet, it's a federal crime. So we have the federal court system. I don't need you to go through that. We have different circuits. We'll kind of skip through that. Okay, intellectual property law, copyright. And this is where we start looking at software. So the copyright is federal. So let me slow down a little bit. So everything is jurisdiction is the federal. We don't have any state laws that are associated with it. The only thing that's state-related is income, whether you're earning money and whether you're paying taxes correctly, which would also be franchise tax, which would be local sales tax. So that's who's going to get on your back if you're running an e-commerce site. You're making something, you're developing something, or selling something online. The state people are going to get after you out of revenue. The federal people are going to get after you out of everything else. So the federal law applies to literary works as well. So you're in the state of California, you write a piece of software. Actually, let's not even talk about software a second. Let's say you write a book. Or let's say you write an essay for your class. You wrote assignment number 1 and assignment number 2. Because you wrote it, it's copyrighted by you. Believe it or not, there's nothing you really need to do. from a federal level or from a state level. So the originator applies to textual materials. So when you ever hear a copyright, think of books. Copyright is text. But text traditionally has been words. People write a book, they write. When you write something on your website, you're copyrighted. You're writing copyrighted material if you wrote it. If you're writing something that somebody else wrote, you're committing plagiarism, which is a copyright violation. So anything textual. So what we have here, but gradually, we have text cover, text, websites, music, photographs, designs, software. All fall under the same category. So if you take a picture of something and your picture is your picture, it belongs to you. So if someone takes your picture off of your website, puts it on their website, they're technically breaking the law, federal law, that says it because it's copyright. So copyright applies to the expression of ideas, the words used, not to the ideas themselves, nor to physical items. So you could take a picture of the ITU new building in San Jose. You don't own the building. You don't have to own the building, but your picture of the building is your property. Because it's your perception, your angle, you adjusted the camera. If you wrote a story, or you wrote a letter to yourself, you wrote an email to yourself about the building, it doesn't really matter. The content of it is the fact that you expressed yourself. So, in terms of software, copyright applies to the program instructions. So when you're writing a software program, and it's your source code, you own the copyright, essentially. But not to the concepts behind the instructions, nor to the files on the disk or on paper where the program instructions are stored. So when you say the binary, it's not copyrighted. The disk, not copyrighted, not protected. So you could steal something off of somebody's disk, essentially, and not violate any copyright protection. But if you stole the contents of something that you stole off of somebody's disk, then you would be you'd be violating copyright protection. So technically, you have to apply that, and that's the interpretation of the law. What happens when you copy a music file? Well, technically, when you copy a music file peer-to-peer using Napster from one computer to another, you haven't done it. When you listen to the file, then you've done it. Technically, according to the law. But they don't even want you to stream it. So copying it and listening to it at the same time, streaming it, is violation. Because you're hearing it, you're using it, instead of just acquiring it. So ownership of the copyright at creation. So the copyright is automatically owned by the creator. So if you have YouTube and you have recorded a video, you own the copyright. It's already copyrighted. So the most common problem, in fact, this happened a couple years ago. People were selling copyrights, like copyright service, and there's nothing to buy. It's a scam. You can't sell a service to have something copyrighted. It's copyrighted automatically when it's created. So, except work for hire. Here's the interesting part, where the employer owns the copyright. So now you're a software engineer, you're working for Acme Inc., a development company that doesn't exist. You've decided to work for. And then they say, write a program, and now you're thinking, oh, I'm going to own it. Nope. If you work for hire, you're employed by somebody else and you're writing source code on their property. They own the source code. Because they hired you by the hiring contract, whether or not you're actually officially working under the table, you're working for $1, doesn't really matter. The relationship that exists between you and the employer automatically gives them the right to everything you write. So a common problem with software engineers is they write something, it was for a project, but they take it away and they use it on another project for another employer. And then they get held up in court because they took it. They violated copyright infringement of the previous employer that they were working for, that they wrote the code at. So, long story short, never write anything in the office or under the contract for which you're currently working. Always do it when you're unemployed. If you're going to invent some interesting algorithm that you're going to use for something, never do it while you're employed. Because what ends up happening is whoever employed you owns everything you've written that's associated with your job title, that's associated with what you were doing. And the question is whether or not they're going to come back and say, well, you were writing a program to do MP3 encoding. This program does video encoding. So too similar. They own it, essentially. So it's kind of like how a copy editor writes for a newspaper. And although they wrote it, the newspaper owns it. And you fall under the blanket of whoever worked the work for hire agreement, even if it's not even illegal. Even if you're working in this country illegally, whatever it is you're writing belongs to it. If you just remember that, you'll never get in trouble. Transfer of copyright. Well, that's how you have to transfer it.
But
So,
I have a
yeah.
question. It's like, say we are employed somewhere, and
Uh-huh.
I mean, if we say that the technology which I was working on in that project.
See, everybody has a story too. This is interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Is some other language. Say I am working on C++
Uh-huh.
in my office.
Yeah.
When I come back to my home, I make a plan to build a software as per my choice.
If it's at home, it's
Yeah,
totally yours.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I want to
Yeah.
ask. I'm employed, but I'm doing that at my home.
Only if it falls into the umbrella of what you're doing for your job. If you take your work home with you, it belongs to your employer. If it's something you're doing for them. If you're doing it for yourself, you own yourself. I mean, just because you have a job doesn't necessarily mean they take everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you own everything you do personally.
And
As long as you don't mix it. That's why people don't mix personal with business. Because then you draw the fine line and say, this is my program that I've written on my own that I'm going to take to market. Yeah, I've been working with you on something else, but I've done this all at home. It's on my home computer, blah, blah, blah. When you start taking it to work, you start mixing business with pleasure there, then there have been high-profile cases in which the programmer has lost. They said, no, they own that. You wrote it at work. They paid you. You're sitting right there in the company seat on the company computer writing source code for yourself, but they paid you to do it. Just because you didn't want to use it for the company, you want to use it for yourself, but then the programmer loses 99.9% of the time, because if you're doing it at work, it's part of work. So you can translate that into email. You sent a personal email to your friend at work while you're doing your job, and it was something about a birthday party. The company owns that email, which means they have the right to save it, they have the right to publish it, they have the right to read it. It's their property. Because you're doing it, although it's personal, you're doing it at work while you're being paid by your employer. So that's how they get around all of the problems with privacy. In America about, maybe 20 years ago by now, it was like, is the company allowed to read my email? There is absolutely no expectation of privacy anymore because of copyright laws, because everything you do at work it's owned by your employer. So if you're going to send hate mail about something, do it on your own personal computer at home. Because even if you do it on your personal computer, when you bring your personal computer to work, it falls under the company now. Everything on your personal computer is now property of the company. Not a good idea to bring personal computer to work. Not a good idea to take a work computer home and put personal stuff on it. And that's not good at all. There was a big profile case from the Veterans Administration. This is what started the SARS. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, this is the whole foundation for why that act was actually imposed. The guy takes a notebook home for the weekend. He's doing work. The Veterans Administration hired him to file cases on health insurance for veterans. He's got 2 million veterans he's got to work with. He can't finish it. He takes it home for the weekend, takes part of the database, copies it on his computer, takes his computer home. On the way home, he unlocks he unlocks his door, puts everything inside, goes out to dinner, comes back, and his house gets stolen. Everything in his house gets stolen. Or his notebook got stolen out of his house. So the guy gets fired because, he lost all this information, right? He comes back, and he comes back to his boss and says, well, there's nothing in the policy that says, show me how I can legally get fired for this. And the guy said, well, you can't, actually. There's no fair use policy. There's no equipment policy. So they have to, they kept him fired because what ended up happening was all the veterans, like millions of them, some of them that weren't even on the notebook, filed a class action lawsuit. Each one of them got between $15,000 and $20,000 when it settled because their privacy was invaded. their protection, their data was stolen. It was out, freely available. And I don't know what this data was. I guess it was probably identity theft, capable of being used for identity theft or something. Long story short, they recovered the notebook. They found it a year and a half later. It had never even been turned on. Each one of the veterans got 15, 20 so thousand. I mean, they got a ton of money for nothing. The guy who got fired sued the Veterans Administration for wrongful termination. He's got, some multi-billion-dollar retirement settlement out of that. His boss, who got fired, also sued for wrongful termination. He's in the Bahamas somewhere enjoying the rest of his life. It costs a lot of money. And the problem was we had no laws. Nothing that said we couldn't take the work home with us. Nothing that said that, just because it got stolen, he's responsible for it. So now that's where we got the fair use policy. So now if you actually sign up and legally work for an American company, especially in the state of California where this actually happened, you're going to have like a whole set of documents you have to sign, new hire forms and stuff. One of them is going to say fair use on it. And it's going to outline what it is you're allowed and not allowed to bring into the office, which means you can't bring your own person. Most of it, 99% of them, says you can't bring your own personal computer into the office. And you can't take personal computers from the office outside unless you sign or you have approval. And you can't copy stuff from the network and vice versa. You can't install anything on the computers. You can't use the computers for personal use. It basically disclaims all of the different liabilities that are associated. Because what we end up having in the U.S., and believe it or not, even now, even today, or Friday, I guarantee it, we had a good percentage of Americans who were online looking for stuff that they were going to do this weekend, maybe. I don't know. Shopping, playing around, ordering airline tickets, doing something that was personal on the company computer, which technically violates the fair use policy, which is grounds for termination. So it really helped the firing process, because now we don't need, you just look at it. Look at the cookies on the file, and you look at the browser history. Oh, look, you ordered an airline ticket. Oh, you're fired. Makes it easier to terminate people, but people still do it all the time. It's amazing what local people will do on company computers without even thinking that they even signed this contract. So now we have data protection rights, fair use rights, all this other stuff that came out of that Veterans Administration case, or the high-profile kind of thing, because there weren't any laws. So. All right, going back to finish this up here. At creation, it's created. We can transfer the copyright just by signing an agreement. So in the United States, copyright is property that can be sold or licensed. So because it can be licensed, that's where you come up with this user's license agreement. So where you're not buying a copyrighted software program when you install it on your computer, what you're doing is you're getting a license. You're not even buying music, actually. You're getting a license to listen to the music. You're not even getting a license to copy the music or to store the music. It's just to listen to it that you got your license for. The agreement to sell a writ is basically a contract to sell a writing. Verbal contract isn't worth the paper it's written on. Yeah, no, it's not written on paper. So, ownership of the copyright, international differences. And this is the interesting part. And this is why if you have worked in import-export, the worst thing you can do is try to get a product made outside of the U.S., bring it in with a CD-ROM disk. Or even a CD-ROM drive is going to cause you problems. Install disk, floppy disk, anything that causes you issues because of the whole differences in copyright between the different countries. They scrutinize it, they read it, they erase it, they do a bunch of crap to it when it goes over the border because it's an issue. Sometimes called moral rights, so in countries such as Canada, France, the creator of the work retains the moral rights. It's not called copyright, and it cannot be sold, or instances of the right attribution. So you can't actually sell moral rights. So in this country you can. Registration, that's where people catch you, and that's why these fake scammer companies I originally mentioned that said, oh yeah, you can copyright it. It's going to cost you $29.95. All right, so copywriting is free in this country. Don't ever pay anyone to get anything copyrighted. No, yeah, okay, now you can we've copyrighted it for you. Now you can put copyrighted by B. Hecker in 2011. You can do that on your own without anyone telling you can do that. What you do is you register. You go to the United States Patent and Trademark Office. and you can register your copyright. It costs you less than $20. Of course, don't quote me. Inflation, modern days, time changes. Probably about $20 is what I'm thinking. It's nominal. It's cheap. You pay, and what you do is you register. So in the U.S., copyright is established automatically. In this country, you can register the claim with the Copyright Office. So you go to a website, and you fill out a form, and you give them $20, and now you're registered. What the registration does is it provides one level of protection above just putting your name on it. Because as soon as you sign your name on it, it's copyrighted. Actually, even if you don't sign your name on it, it's copyrighted by you. To register it means it's now public knowledge, which means if you write a book, you register it. Then you go get it published, and then they print it. So common misperceptions when people buy a book, it's copyrighted by the publisher. Nah, they're not doing anything but printing it on paper for you. So now that leads you to believe, my manual. Yes, if you write a manual that's associated with your user guide, that's associated with your software as a software engineer, that's automatically copyrighted. You actually can go take a PDF file of it, take a doc file of it, upload it, register it, and voila, it's now registered, which means you can prosecute easily. And you make it aware. It's almost like telling the world, hey, I wrote this. Here it is. The registration makes it public. So it's not required, though. It's optional. So anyway, in the U.S., copyright gives the owner exclusive rights. Then why do we want to do this? Well, you have exclusive rights to reproduce, distribute, perform, display, and license. So that's why people actually register software. And you can register. I'll show you the website to go to get all the information you'd ever want on this. But when you write your software, it's copyrighted. If you want to register it, you register it. You pay your $29.95. What does that do? It gives you the right to come back and say, you can't make a copy of that software. It's you can license a copy of it, but you can't take it. It gives you rights to come back and prosecute against infringements, hopefully. But what you're really trying to do is reduce the amount of reproduction and the amount of people changing it, altering it, and software using it. Last thing you want is your algorithm, your source code, your pride and joy to be used by somebody else for free. Because we all know software. We all know how to compile. We also know how to decompile. And for every compiler, there's a decompiler. And the source code the binary is pretty much giving away your source code in this country for almost anything. So, and elsewhere. It doesn't really matter where you're from or what you're doing with it. It's obtainable. We have some special exceptions. The first sale. So the owner of an object, a book, can sell the object without permission of the copyright owner, if he's the owner of the book. And then fair use, which is that term I used before in terms of the computers. So limited use is permitted without permission of the copyright owner in a review of a short quotation. So fair use in terms of copyright is providing the reference citation. If you've taken an English course, I'm sure it's the case somewhere else, we have this reference citation where you go, so-and-so said, comma, quotation mark, blah, 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 and then you put in there, Hecker, comma, 2011. Now you haven't infringed copyright protection, which gets you free from plagiarism. Otherwise, what ends up happening technically is if you cut and paste and you don't quote and you don't cite the reference, whether you're quoting or not, you've committed copyright infringement, and they call it plagiarism in terms of writing, or software. It's amazing how many junior level software developers will cut and paste examples that they find. That's copyright infringement. That's wrong, actually. They don't even know that. And if they do it for the company, well, then there's grounds for termination right there. So, code by example. Actually, I hate to tell you, but I have run into more senior level people who do that. Oh yeah, look at this. Here's the algorithm written. Here, just cut, paste, put it in here. Yeah, you're breaking the law, actually. So, derivation software. Another interesting idea. So when software is derived from other software, so open source software cut and pasting, copyright in the new code only is owned by the new developer. So let's say you have committed code copying, or you have taken something that was open source and you used it in a commercial application, which happens a lot. you still own what you wrote, believe it or not. So now you got a piece that's got somebody else's stuff and your stuff. This is where licensing comes in. So let's say, for example, you wrote this encoder that takes in and does MP3 encoding. The reason why I keep mentioning MP3 encoding is because it's not free. It's licensed, copyrighted encoding. Every one of the encoders is, I mean, we have a couple shareware, open source versions of it. But if you're doing any MP3 coding in this country, you're paying a royalty. You should be paying a royalty. It's not free. It's one of the things that's left that hasn't been free yet, is video and audio conversion, which you'd think, 2011, you should be able to do this. Not legally. Not without paying a fee. But anyway, long story short, if you write an encoder and you put some new stuff in it yourself, you own the new stuff, and you've copyright infringed the old stuff, so you pay the royalty. Yeah, this is all money-based. You pay money to the person who actually owns the code, and you're legal again. So you just come up with an agreement, which is like a lot of companies do when they get caught. They go, oh, you own this? Yeah. Oh, okay, so, you know, here's a contract, sign it. You know, you pay us for every copy of the software you sell, you pay us $10 or something. And you have you have a settlement agreement that comes to royalty fees. Happens all the time, actually, more so than you'd think. So if you write S where it includes code derived from A, B, and C, and D, you can't distribute or license S unless you have a right or copyright of the copyright owner. So when creating a software product, you must have documented rights to use every one of the components to do it legally. And when you say, oh, you know, people do it every day, actually people do, they get away with it. The only thing happens is, so you've gone through and you've successfully created a program and you have it on the market and everything's great. Actually, I'll show you the answers here. And everything is perfect. I'm not even talking about this slide. And then you get slapped with a lawsuit that says, oh, look, you've been doing this encoding for the last 5 years and you've sold 5,000 copies of it at $100. Where's our revenue? And you have to give all your money to this other company because you infringed upon their algorithm that your junior level programmer cut and pasted without you accepting it. Because you own it, because he wrote it for you while he was working for you. Which is kind of nasty, actually, when you think about it. So what does this say? You're at ITU, you finish your project, what use can you make of your work, blah, 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 whatever. At ITU, you own the copyright in the work. You own the copyright in the work that you do for a class. Anybody else, including ITU or your clients, need your permission before using the software. Which is interesting because I'm pretty sure the ITU EMS has you sign something or click to something. Is there an agreement you guys have to sign? Registration? Yeah, there's something where you have to fill out something that says when you upload your CSLOs, or you upload something into that they're allowed to use. You're giving permission for ITU to use your work, which is why.
Yeah, we haven't uploaded anyone yet, so might be, we haven't seen that.
I wouldn't be surprised in the near future. There's a button or something you have to press or agree to. In fact, I think the new students only see this when they get their new accounts. Returning students, I don't think ever see this. But there used to be something where you had to agree, because what you're doing, yeah, you're uploading your work. So what if you're taking my object-oriented design and Java course and you come up with this really nice algorithm and this, you know, this implementation of this program you wrote, and you want to sell this program? If you've uploaded it into the ITU, have you given it to ITU, you turned it in for an assignment, a huge question you got to ask yourself is who owns it? Which is interesting because in a lot of research programs, it's different. Some universities own your work, some don't. Some, when you actually start like PhD programs and stuff, or master's theses, you can actually negotiate. I'm going to own this part, you're going to own this part, we're going to co-publish, we're going to co-own it, you know, what happens? Because when you start working at this, especially at, at the level of the graduate work, you're inventing things, you're writing things, you're doing stuff that's hopefully should be significant, maybe a contribution to the academic field you're in. Sometimes there's value to it, regardless of what it is, whether it's a writing or source code or whatever. So one of the biggest questions, the last students never even consider is who owns it? And can they do that? can they take my CSLO and give it to and show it to the accreditation board? Well, you want them to, actually, because it's going to add value to your degree. But I think technically they have a right to, because I think you may have signed something, or you should have signed something that gave them rights to. So we'll see. Here's some good questions about software. Some questions to ask yourself. When software is written, who owns it? And the person who writes it, except for work for hire. You know that already. And can anyone else be permitted to use the software? By permission, by copyright. That's why, you know, for example, you're in web development, because a lot of software engineers are working in web development now. You get audio clips, pictures. It's really hard to find original content that's not owned by somebody else. So all you have to do is get permission. And you just put it on the bottom, you know, by permission or from so-and-so. You're just giving credit. And sometimes you can even ask the person, as long as you've legally documented it somehow, that's what you want to do. By email request, by a letter, something that says, do you give me permission to use your pictures? And oh yeah, sure, go ahead. Then you've given permission. So when you signed up for Facebook, you signed to give Facebook everything. They have permission to use all of your photos, all of your everything, all your content. You don't own any of that. It's not copyrighted by you. When you write it on Facebook, it's owned by Facebook. Which means if there's a problem, you know, whatever. It's not your, you don't own it, so you have no rights in terms of the content or the use. However, there are some people pushing that. You know, with recent issues with photos and things being shared on other applications that are using it. Yeah, people don't like that idea. So people have challenged it, and in response what they've done is they've just made it harder. You know, they put up some restrictions, some control. And if you want to be safe, don't put it out there at all. That's what I say. I would say, so how can copyright be transferred to somebody else? Well, you know the answer to that question already. It can be, property can be sold, given away, usually by contract. And here's some other self-check kind of questions. This is material we've gone over already. You know, you are employed by company X writing software. When you leave, who owns the software? The company does. They own everything. And what use can you make of the work? None, without permission. Which is interesting, because there's these things called contracts that happen when you work for company X and you go to company Y and you're using the same algorithm. You're using the same technique, because they were both scanner companies, or they were both cell phone companies, or something was similar about the companies. And then they come back and prosecute you, because you're at fault for transferring the information from company A to company B. It happens all the time, actually. And then sometimes you actually get lured into it. They go, oh, hey, you used to work for Motorola, huh? So you know about their chipsets? You know about this, you know that? Oh, yeah. Can you do that for us? Oh, yeah. And they do it, and they come back, oh, no, you know what? We hired this guy. He used to work for you. No. And then they come after you. It actually does happen. I know people are smarter than that, though. They go, oh, wait a minute now. Oh, I can't do that. I signed an exit agreement that said that I wasn't going to do that, which is what they have you do now. So work for a freelance company. When you finish it, who owns it? Depends on the circumstances. Do you have a written agreement? Which is interesting. Most of the consulting contracts you'll sign say they own it. No one is going to have you own anything. Why should that be the case? So they always own everything. What use can you make of the work? If you hold the copyright, it's unrestricted. Otherwise, none without an agreement. So you have to go back and say, hey, can I use that? So that's pretty much everything in terms of code writing. And that, just remember, anything written, whether it's source code, whether it's music, anything that's recorded or written is copyright. You can't patent that. That falls under copyright law. Then we have contract law, which is really business law, and licenses. That falls under contract. So we have contract that allows intellectual property to be sold. Economic arrangements, we all seen contracts. Actually, the contract, when you go to Fry's and you buy something and they give you a sales receipt, that's your contract. Actually, that falls under contract as well. When you buy a piece of software, you sign a shopping cart or registration, something. You don't actually have to register software anymore. In the old days, people had to do registration. You can legally use software without registering it. Because if they gave you a license of it, you can have a license without a registration. So that's like another common problem. In fact, we're not seeing as much registration anymore. It's going away. because people have realized, oh, we don't have to register. Because when you register, you give me your name, your telephone number, all this information. People don't like junk mail, so they don't register. I didn't like to register even when they were telling me it was required. It's not required, not legally. So written documents with signatures or contracts, you don't sign a sales receipt, but the sales receipt usually has a date, number of items on it, usually. It serves enough. So as long as you have enough of the points that work towards the agreement, then it can be inferred to be an agreement. So if you have agreed to install Microsoft Windows XP on your computer, or 7, and you have flipped through and you said, I agree to all those pages and pages of 0.5, point whatever, reading material, and you install it and it removes everything on your hard drive and reformats everything for you, and you decide, oh, I have no longer a working system, everything's broken. You can't go back to Microsoft and say, hey, your system, it broke my system. Nope, because you said that you take full responsibility for everything. In fact, they can ask for the software back, which is interesting. Because when we buy a product, we want a warranty on a product, right? If I buy a car and it breaks down tomorrow, usually they sell us the standard warranty with the car. There's a warranty of merchantability, which is a concept, another legal concept that falls into purchasing products in this country. When we purchase software, we don't have a warranty. There's nothing that says the software actually has to work. Which is interesting because, you know, you download all these programs all the time after you've already paid for it. And people fall for this every day. Oh, yeah, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. They download it and it's a joke. They've paid for it, they've downloaded it, but it's a joke. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. There's no recourse. There's no legal recourse for you. You can't take it back to the store and return it. So people send hate mail and they threaten the person who's selling the software. What ends up happening is the place this person selling it won't do business with them anymore, shuts them down. But in the meantime, you're out $5 or $10. Happens with apps all the time. You know, you install it. I don't like the app. Oh, sorry. Your problem, kind of thing. So anyway, I'm finishing up so we can take a break soon. So I know, don't feel free to go into the bathroom. I've been talking too long. So I should be taking a break, but I sort of want to get through this because we're almost close to the end, and then I can move on to another topic later. So, all right, so contracts. Written contracts usually have signatures, permanent, temporary, whole, part, exclusive, non-exclusive, termination, things of that nature. Here we go. This is the website I kept talking about. It's called Creative Commons. Go to the Creative Commons website. It'll help you create. You can actually, they create a template where you put in your company name and the date and stuff like that and information. And it gives you text. You cut and paste it, and you can use that as your software license agreement. And you can, you know, it's a great resource for registration information, for legal related issues associated with software. It's www.creativecommons.org. Free organization. It's non-profit. You know, you can go in. They're not trying to sell you something. But they can tell you through all of the different projects and all of the different things how to make yourself legal, especially if you're doing anything on the web, internet-wise. It can give you information about, you know, canned phrases to put on certain places to protect yourself. And I've actually had a lot of students go in there and kind of upgrade your company website by making it legal. Putting the little thing there that says, you know, we do not give you permission to copy this content, you know, and then that way if somebody does copy your content, you know, it's owned by you. So you can go back and say, hey, quit using my pictures. These are my pictures of the IT building. Quit using those pictures or something. So, otherwise, you know, if you're not claiming it as yours, it's hard for people to know that it's yours. Which is why people register, even though you don't have to register a copyright. They register it anyway, because it's like people that save 5 copies of something. In the old days, actually, people instead of before registering was very popular, people used to, you know, they came out with a really good idea. Really concept. They write it on a piece of paper. They mail it to themselves. We call it a poor man's copyright because then you've documented it, so that 5 years from now, when somebody else comes out with your same idea, you can say, "Hey, look, I did this first." Because it's sealed and it's documented. Because of the U.S. postal stamp that goes on it, and the fact that it has all the processing with the mail system, so it can show. And then you leave it sealed. So, evidence or proof that you came out with that and you wrote that first. So people that used to do like this happened in the like math days when people used to come up with these formulas for certain things, and even recipes. People do that, and with hidden secret recipes and stuff to prove that it's yours. Because if Mrs. Fields comes out and produces your recipe, you can prove that you did it first because you've got a date when you mailed that envelope. So, and it's sealed and it's written down inside. But you don't even have to do that anymore. You just go and register it now. That proves it right there. So registration and mailing it to yourself is pretty much the same thing.
What about if you email?
Email doesn't. Email, believe it or not, until about a year ago, didn't become legal that way. But now legal emails now can be used for that. Actually, legally, in the old days, it had to be U.S. Postal Service. Then they changed it to carriers. This is for correspondence with contracts and legal documents that had to be certified, mailed, kind of thing. Now they've loosened it up so much you can send things legally through email. Like you send someone a termination notice, you can fire someone by email now. Which, I don't know if I agree with that, because you can spoof an email account. Somebody else can write the email. In the old days, somebody else's handwriting was somebody else's handwriting. Somebody's signature was their signature. Hardly very many legal documents can be processed without a signature. But now they're taking electronic signatures. That's kind of scary. Not every place is doing it. A small majority will actually take electronic signatures. And the electronic signature, they consider the reply. Here, I'll send you an email. When you reply to it, that's your electronic signature. Like, how did you know my nephew didn't reply to that, or somebody next door replied to it, or something? How do you know that I replied to it? I like my signature better, personally. All right, that's everything you ever wanted to know about patents. About copyright. Let's talk about patents for a second. Patents are easier, actually. There's an entire filing process, and they take years, actually, up to 7 years to be processed. And they're good for 17 years. Copyright's good forever. Source code does not have an expiration date on it. If you wrote a basic program with line numbers and everything, in the 80s, it's still valid. So patents apply to inventions. Copyrights apply to perceptions and original thoughts and words and expressions. So, if you want to sound intelligent, call whatever it is by the right name. Source code is an expression, so it's a copyright. A patent is an idea in terms of an invention that doesn't exist. So if you invented a new algorithm to do MP3 encoding, it's both copyright and a patent that would apply to it. If you implemented an algorithm in a source code that you felt was nice that you did for that's copyright. So you can reinvent the wheel. You don't have to have anything original in a copyright. In a patent, it all has to be original. So it should be non-obvious, novel, and useful, which means that there's actually which is why software patents are extremely hard to get. Because there's a program for everything. There's a utility for everything. And it's very hard to come out with unique things these days that aren't like a duplication of something else out there in the world. So hardware is definitely a lot easier to get patented than software, which is why there aren't too many software patents out there. Requires complex process. It's a long application process. Holds up for 17 years, 20 years from the application, because you have 3 years it takes you actually to get the thing approved sometimes, which takes a while. So copyright applies to the expression of ideas, patents to the ideas themselves. In terms of software patents, there's problems with software patents. Poor quality of patent examiners can lead to a broad patent for routine computer concepts. Imagine all the training that you've had as a software engineer. It's really difficult to find someone who's a patent attorney who actually understands what's involved with the software, what the idea of the software is doing, how it compares with other software out there on the market, which makes it difficult, again, for software patents to actually exist. Usually difficult to know where the idea actually originated. And going back to, you thought of this idea while you were working on program XYZ at company ABC. Who owns the patent? They own the copyright, maybe, if you wrote it on the job. And then, believe it or not, you as the originator own the patents. So you can actually write something for somebody else for which they may own the copyright, but you own the patent because you came up with the idea, even if you were working for hire. So it's kind of tricky, especially when you're doing consulting or who owns what. What ends up happening is you don't say anything. Keep it a secret. And then when you're not working for the company anymore, if you don't want them to bother you about it, then you disclose the patent, and then you file the application. If you file it, you can actually file it on the job. So Bob, who works for Acme Inc., patents something that Acme Inc. uses that Bob owns the patent on. There's absolutely no glory and there's no money in patents. A patent is a full disclosure of your idea. It's kind of like writing a dissertation for a doctoral program. You're doing nothing, there's no glamour, there's no money in it. There's money in copyright, because copyright can be infringed. Patents are fully disclosed. So what you're doing is kind of the opposite. There's some international differences. The situation is a serious mess. So part of the process of doing the patent is that you're contributing to a body of knowledge, and you're taking ownership for your contribution. So you're saying, I've invented a new type of chair, and this new type of chair only has 3 legs instead of 4. So they go out and they search all the different chairs, and they go, oh, no, we never had a 3-legged chair. Here's a 3-legged chair. And Bob invented it while working at Apple. Okay, good. Doesn't really matter. Apple doesn't get any credit. Bob is the one who invented it. So Bob fills out the application. Bob gets credit for the patent. It sits there, and it's in Bob's ownership name for the rest of it. He doesn't make any money off of it, because other people can go through and search for patent. And oh, I like Bob's idea. Read through Bob's description and fully disclose how the chair is created. They can go out and market the chair. They can go out and create the chair if they want to. They can't steal it it's not copyrighted. It's different. It's kind of a different concept. It just basically, in the old days, it was an inventor's way of getting credit. You know, like, I invented electricity. I invented fire. I don't know. I invented light bulbs or something. Actually, there was a guy who invented light bulbs. It only lasts for 20 years anyway, or 17 years, and then you can go ahead and violate it. So it's hard to violate it, huh?
What about royalty? With the guy
Royalty is different. Royalty is on copyright. It's money for using something that you don't own, and it's a license agreement. So music companies who do copyright get royalties. So if you're the Beatles, you own Yellow Submarine for the rest of your life. If you were the Beatle that wrote Yellow Submarine, that's yours. It's copyright, it doesn't expire. Patents expire in 17 years. Your copyright, you can get royalties on because you can have a generic agreement that says, well, if you want to listen, well, actually, if you listen to it, you have to pay. The radio station actually has to pay to broadcast it. You as the listener listens to it for free public broadcast. But if you want to take in, for example, iTunes recently added the Beatles because they opened it up. I don't know why, but they made it available. Before it was exclusive, they didn't go through mainstream distribution on licensings and royalties. But every time anyone downloads a Beatles song, they get 50 cents or something. People who own the copyright. And the person who originally owned it doesn't own it anymore. I think it would go to Lisa Presley or something, and then it went to somebody else. And then, I don't know who owns it now, but whoever owns it now decided to make some money off of it. So now it's part of iTunes. But that whole thing was, is it available? Is it licensable? Can we pay a royalty on it? Before, the royalty wasn't available. Now the royalty is available. Someone decided they needed money, probably. In fact, I think it was part of the Jackson Foundation. And Michael Jackson, they needed money to settle his estate, which is why they opened it up, I think. But don't quote me on that. I have no idea. But there's somebody wanted money, which is why it became part of iTunes recently. But it wasn't available. It was not downloadable. So you can have a company like Apple who can sell music but can't touch the Beatles because it's copyrighted information owned by somebody who won't license it, who won't make it available. They decided they want money, so they make it available. They can actually, once you make it available, you can make it unavailable. You can turn it off. Just because you licensed it out doesn't necessarily mean it has to stay. You can cancel or revoke the license if you want. And when you license it, that's when royalties come in. You pay a royalty because you're part of the license so that you can use that copyrighted information. You can sell the file. You can sell the song. So that's how royalties fit in. Trade secrets and non-disclosures, believe it or not, I'm getting to the end. Usually you sign what's called an NDA. Everyone's heard of those, non-disclosure agreements. Basically, if you've ever joined any consultancy and you did not sign an NDA, I'd question the consultancy, what they were doing, because they should want to have their secrets kept, which means you can't go out in the street corner and sell all the trade secrets of the person you're working for. Non-disclosure agreements. Trade secret is information including formulas, patterns, compilations, programs. This is a long list. Devices, methods, techniques, processes, drivers, independent, whatever. You can't disclose information that's owned by the company. Example, Microsoft source code. You can't go out and sell it on the street corner just because you work for Microsoft. If you don't sign a non-disclosure, you can, technically. Non-disclosure agreement is not to disclose trade secrets. Trade secret does not expire. So, if you remember anything, patents expire 17 years. There's no money in it. It just gets credit to the originator. Copyright is what you want. It never expires. Royalties, money. That's why people copyright. Source code's copyrightable, not patentable, usually. Trade secrets never expire. A trade secret is always a trade secret. It goes to the death of the person who knows the trade secret. So it doesn't expire as long as it's kept a secret. So it's a trade secret if it's kept secret. Once it's opened up, then it's no longer a trade secret. Then it's free. So this is how people steal recipes and things. That's how this whole thing with the Coke and Pepsi are still trade secrets. They have not publicly disclosed their formulas. So it's still Coke and Pepsi. You cannot like duplicate that, theoretically. So competitors may use secrets obtained through extraordinary means. If you learn of a trade secret when working for one employer, you must not disclose it when working for another. Otherwise, you get caught on trade secret problems. So, in fact, actually, that's all I have on trade secrets. But because trade secrets are pretty easy, you can't register a trade secret that happens naturally. In fact, it's kind of like copyright. It happens when it happens. Like, oh, we came up with a formula. Oh, it's our trade secret. It's our way of doing something. So you can't retaliate against the company and sell it. Trademarks are a little different. In fact, trade secret is only a trade secret while it's secret. As soon as it gets out, it's no longer a trade secret. Trademark's the same way. Once you start violating a trademark and it's acceptable, then it's violatable. It's kind of like how Q-tips and cotton swabs. Everybody calls cotton swabs, any kind of cotton swab, a Q-tip, but there is a Q-tip brand, and that's a trademark called Q-tip. So, specific names or phrases. So, secret is a secret. Trademark is a name. It's the I in iPhone. So, iPad, iPhone, iBlock. Apple tried to take and make I. You can't take a letter of the alphabet and make it a trademark. But I anything, they wanted to own I everything. And we've probably noticed they didn't get it. Because we got I disk and everything out there with an I on it. They came up with it. It could have gone either way. If they had pushed the case strong enough, they could have won. They were very close to winning, but they didn't. Which kind of tells you. So unique within a line of business products. As an example, we have apples that we can trademark as apples. You know, the fruit. But if we try to use apple in a computer, trade-specific computer reference, we're going to get in trouble. We can't open up Apple computers. We can open up orange computers. Actually, we can't. There is an orange. We can go grape computer. No, I think there's a grape, too.
Grapes, yeah.
All right, a pineapple? No, there's a pineapple. They do IBM. They do iPhone stuff. I don't know. Pick a fruit. Banana computer. No, there's a banana. There's a banana. All right, I think we're all out of apple. We're all out of fruit references. But you can tell you how original people are. It's not really. Apple was most popular, I think, though. It's a word. But you can't open up Apple. Generic terms cannot be trademarked. Windows currently under dispute. Because Microsoft has Windows trademarked. Some people have disputed that because there's other Windows products. And, is that a trademark violation? Well, there's actually some open cases right now when they're trying to get, just like Apple lost I think Microsoft's going to lose Windows, actually. Why should they have a trademark on Windows? So, X Windows, Does that violate Windows 95? Windows 7? So trademark can be lost if they're not defended. So actually, they could come back and say, well, we have X Windows, we have Windows whatever, we have Windows whatever. So, you lost it. You can't trademark Windows anymore. We can have Windows everything, which is kind of like what happened with I. We had I everything for a while. So now we have E everything as well. I don't even know who owned the original E for, e-commerce, e-business, e-whatever. Everything's E. E-education, e-learning. So trademarks can be lost. So lost trademarks, aspirin was lost, Kleenex was lost. Kept or held Coke and Pepsi. You can't because Coke actually goes out and monitors everything. They have a huge media team that goes out there and makes sure no products are on the market that say Coke anything or Pepsi anything unless it's owned by Coke or Pepsi. Because once you let it out, it goes out. And I believe, not on the list, but Q-tips, I think, has actually been let out as well as a trademark. Privacy. Invasion of privacy, intrusion, appropriation, unreasonable, publicity, and false light. This is another area where we've got software that is compared with other software. Look, just as fast as Norton Antivirus. It's Norton Virus. What is that? Well, not only are they violating trademark, they're probably violating privacy as well because they're intruding into profits because people think they're buying Norton Antivirus when they're buying Norton Virus or something because the name's too similar. And then you can sue them for privacy issues, especially if they've taken something and they look and feel the same way. So they've misappropriated, let's say, the distributor, the owner of the software. In fact, you see this all the time. There's programs out there that you can download that look like another program, but they're not the other program. They're a fake program. You see this with fake iPhones, fake that you get. You can buy them on eBay. Actually, you can buy fake iPads and iPhones that are made out of they look like, but they have Android on them instead of Microsoft. I guess Apple stuff on it. So, all right. So be careful about collecting personal data without the knowledge of the individual as well. That's a problem. Privacy issues in software development. Special legislation about the privacy of children as well. This country wants to protect children. Okay, so a lot of public information is considered private. So when you're collecting it and using it, there's that dispute between public and private. It becomes a legal issue with software development. Increasing amount of public information also available on the internet. Reverse phone lookups, identity checks. Believe it or not, I hate to tell you this as well, but most of the information about the background checks was provided to you by the American government, free of charge. So it's called the county records, and now it's electronic. So some companies have obtained for free county records, and have taken it and turned it into an electronic format and have sold it to other people who are out there selling it to you when you do a background check. Most of it came from the department, the local county clerk's office. In fact, if you ever want any information about someone, you don't have to pay to do it on the internet. You can actually just walk down to the Santa Clara or the San Jose or the Sunnyvale county clerk, where they hold all of the public records of everyone who's bought and sold a house, bought and sold opened up a financial loan, went to school, did everything. All the junk on everybody is in this office. Just free. Because the government in the old days decided somewhere along the lines that it should be available. It's public record. So anytime you've had any document stamped from a public court proceeding, from a child birth certificate, from an immigration certificate, from anything, there's a record of it. So that record is displayed for free to the entire U.S. population. So that's where all this information is coming from. And now there's currently legislation to make that private or with control, because it's been abused, because this system was around long before the internet, long before background checks on the internet, which is ridiculous. So anyway, I won't get into that. I'll save you on that. Privacy in email. We all know there is no privacy in email. So email, legally, email is like a postal letter these days. There's an expectation of privacy in transit. So although you don't have privacy in the email or the company that you're working at, while it's being transmitted, you do have privacy. So it's illegal to have a network system that steals packages, sniffs the network, looks at information as it's going across. Mail losses. It loses its special protective status once it leaves the letter carrier's grasp. That U.S. mail does, actually. For email, expectation of privacy while the signal transfers over the internet. Email lost its protective status at the mail server. So once it hits the mail server, it could be looked by anybody, as long as it made it to the right mail server that you sent it to. But while it's on its way, it's protected. So I'm pretty sure that needs to be revamped soon. Should be protected all over the place. Privacy in the workplace, there's no privacy. The test for employers, employees, do you have a reasonable expectation of privacy? Reasonable in personal private areas. So it would be against the law for your employer to videotape the contents of the bathroom or the activity in the bathroom. However, there's no problem videotaping you while you're sitting at your desk, or recording you while you're sitting in a class, or whatever you're doing in a public area. So public areas are recordable, private areas are exclusively private. It's an invasion of your privacy. Once you leave the corporate front door, there's a certain span that they legally can record you. So if you go outside and talk to a competitor from another company and you're standing next to the window and it's within the distance of their video camera, they can use that. It's legal. If you're sitting in your car talking to your competitor, no. So it depends upon how far away you are from the front door of the building. In terms of what privacy you might have, never send anything by email that you would not be prepared for your employer to see. So basically you're broadcasting everything, and assume that everything is recorded and everything is read. As a software engineer, you may come across those other people's personal information. Keep it private. Actually, what ends up happening in a lot of cases is software engineers get overzealous. They go, oh, look at all this information. Look at all these people. And then they start talking to each other. And then they go, oh, yeah, we're working on the payroll program. Look at if so-and-so is making this. So-and-so is making that, you know. And then they end up getting into legal problems because they're disclosing private information. And it's the company that's disclosing it, so the employee could sue the company for what the software engineer did or said or something. So, not a good idea. The Electronic Communications Act 86 says all business communication belongs to that business. Which means you got a contact list, you got a developers list, you got partners you work with. Anything that you document is owned by the company when you leave the company by default. Deleting emails can be ruled intentionally destroying company records, deleting contents of your hard drive, deleting source code files, deleting anything that you don't want the company to see. It's destruction of their property. An archive is worthless if it can't be indexed effectively, so an effort saving everything can be equivalent to saving nothing, essentially. Free speech. I'm actually getting to the end of this, don't worry. We're going to have a break very soon. Free speech. In the U.S., we have the First Amendment protects our right to free speech, freedom of speech, including news reports, religion, expression. In fact, we're seeing this. This is a very modern-day case, what's coming out with a guy who's in the military who disclosed. He's actually being called a traitor, and he's being brought up on treason. U.S. military guy who decided to put up a website to blog stuff that's going on. It violates. In some ways, he's claiming freedom of speech, constitutional right, and the other ways is saying, well, you're giving away military secrets. You're telling the public information that's private, that we don't necessarily want the public to know. You're employed by the U.S. government, therefore it's against the law, and it is, actually, which is why they're charging him with treason. He's a traitor. He's going against the United States government, violating Speech Privacy Act. Okay, so laws in the country may be different. Different countries have different laws in regards to freedom of speech and stuff like that. Special situations, the internet service providers, ISPs, can they divulge all of the information that you have over your connection to the ISP, transmitting and storing intellectual property that they do not own? And they have the right to, because they're providing you a service. They don't have rights to your information, though. They can't steal your ideas and they can't steal your content. But they have right to store it. It's limited rights is what this is. So a special complex framework protects them. So if you run a service, you have to basically be a knowledgeable lawyer. You need one at hand because you have to get stuck into cases. So We see this with software development companies that outsource their servers, outsource their websites, and then you have service providers essentially providing storage space, providing areas, and then that ends up with a legal problem with who's got rights to what. E-commerce, again, operating over different jurisdictions, different boundaries, data subject to various different privacy laws and laws in general, taxation, security, bunch of stuff. Long story short, if you're going to get into software development business, not a bad idea to have a consultant, a lawyer, consultant, or someone to write up your legal contracts, to review your contracts, to oversee what you're doing. In terms of business law, the personnel, every state has different strict laws against recruitment, hiring, firing, stuff like that. That's another area in software development and how the legal system meets in, because software engineers usually work as consultants. A lot of them work in many different companies, one after the other. What you can do in your next company might be affected by what you're doing in your current company, and things of that nature, so it's not a bad idea to be familiar with what limitations you might have if you take a job and if you work at a company. So in your next job, ask before you accept the job. Read the employment contract before you sign it. Who owns what? In fact, now that you might be interested in, next time you sign a consultancy agreement, if you actually read it, you might be noticing a lot of the stuff I've been talking about is in there. It's in there so that they can protect everybody, and everything's clear. What ends up happening is people never read that stuff. I wouldn't either. It's like, pages and pages of information. Who's going to read it? Practical advice, it's often useful to read the text of the law, good sources over the internet, but don't self-diagnose like people do with medical problems. They go to WebMD and they find out they've got something, and then they go to a real doctor, they go, oh, no, you don't have that. People do that with the law all the time. Software engineers go, I need a software license agreement. Let me just cut and paste that one, put it in here. Write your own, it's easy. Creative Commons will help you. So don't try to be a lawyer. And also be aware of the law and not pretending, and use it, professional people for contracts, licenses, for troubles, for personnel issues and stuff like that. So I know it was a long time and we need a break. So we're going to take a break, and I'll kind of assess to see what we have left at that point. So go ahead, take a break, and I'll see you for the next lecture.